Hello guys, today I'll be analyzing the book The Kite Runner by Khaled Husseini. So I recommend that you have read the full book before watching this video, and you have the book or a piece of paper next to you. That way you can take notes, because I'll be mentioning a lot of important and relevant things regarding the book that you might want to note down. So let's begin. So you have the settings. Now the settings this book are very important, because the setting really does affect the plot and sometimes even shapes the story. So you have several settings. So first and foremost, you have Kabul before 1978, before everything changed, before their way of life changed. So that setting, there was Afghan culture, because Kabul is, of course, the capital of Afghanistan, and the traditions of Afghanistan, like the kite competition, which Amir won with the help of Hassan, his friend. Then you have a lot of racism and bullying going on. So this is a hateful part of Afghanistan. This is a negative part of Afghanistan, because you have both the Pashtuns and the Hazaras living in Afghanistan. The Hazaras are the minority, so they face a lot of racism and bullying from the Pashtuns. And you have arranged marriages, and you have the language, which is Farsi. And then you have the Hazaras. So the Hazaras often worked as servants for the Pashtuns. The Pashtuns had more power, they had more money, they were educated, they had more resources. And the Hazaras were not educated, and that's why Amir would have more power than Hassan, so he would often trick him while reading stories for him. So basically, Amir would be reading the story, and then maybe in the middle of the story, he would just go off and like invent events. Like he would pretend like he would be reading to Hassan, but he would be inventing events from his head. And then you have arranged marriages. No, then you have facial abnormalities and certain features. So basically, Hazaras looked a certain way because they had these certain features, and that's how you identified a Hazara, and that's how they got picked on. And they were poor, so they weren't really able to receive medical help. So Hassan had a cleft lip, and Baba got polio on his leg, and that's why he has difficulty with his leg, and he has difficulty walking. He was often bullied for it by Asif. Then you have arranged marriages, which is Ali and Tanawbar, who are Hassan's parents. Now we think that Ali was Hassan's father, but truly Ali was an infertile man, and Sanaubar was a rebellious woman. She committed many sins, and she led men to do many sinful things as well. And Amir's father had an intimate relationship with Sanaubar, which led into to Hassan being conceived. And what does the author try to tell the readers? So there's always a message the author tries to send. So he tries to tell the readers about the common issue of Afghan culture, which are identity, assimilation, and power. And it is true when it comes to identity, because most of the book, this was just a small part of the book, Amir was trying to really find out if he was a religious person. He was never sure of that. And for power, many, like for example the Pashtuns, they were always more powerful than the Hazaras, and they always took advantage of that, and never and they always made sure that the Hazaras know their place and where they belong. And you can consider someone your friend despite differences in your race or social class. So there was this problem, this small internal conflict Amir always had, is that he never considered Hassan his friend, despite them spending most of their time together, having so many memories and having so much love for each other. Amir never considered Hassan his friend, and so did Baba never consider Ali his friend. He loved Ali, he cherished Ali, but Ali was never considered a friend. And when Amir had friends over, Hassan was never around to play with them. So how can readers debate? So is letting go possible? So this is a question that many readers ask themselves. So often in a classroom when this book is read, important question that is asked is letting go of the past possible? And this book answers the question, and each person receives a different answer. It really depends on the way the person reading the book interprets the meaning of the book. Now let's go to the second setting. So you have the setting, which is in Fremont, California. So California had freedom, opportunities, and the bright future. So California was definitely different from Afghanistan. And the society in California, so there was an Afghan community in California, thus it was not as hard for Amir to adjust. And Afghans spent their Sundays in flea markets selling items that way they could make some money. And Amir had the freedom to choose what to study. So Amir always had this passion for writing. He never really liked soccer or the things Baba liked, and they never had this in common, which really put a strain between their relationship. But Amir decided once again to choose what he wants and not make Baba happy, but to make himself happy, and he decided to major in English at university. And important lines which represented, living in California for Baba and Amir. So Amir said, "For me, America was a place to bury my memories." So America, unlike Afghanistan, didn't have all of these things that reminded Amir of what happened with Hassan. That way, he could live in peace, a bit more in peace. He never truly lived in peace, yet it was easier for him. And for Baba, it was a place to burn his, because Baba was an extremely powerful and respected man in Afghanistan. He was powerful, he had businesses, he knew people loved him, he had connections. Yet in America, he was just a simple person working in a gas station, so that was really hard on Baba. And this quote can be found in page 140 if you want highlighted, if your book is next to you. And what does the author try to tell the reader? So he tries to tell them about the unity of Pashtuns. So basically, let me explain this part. So Baba once told Amir that you'll never have a person like a Pashtun, because they will always be by your side no matter what happens. And when Baba got sick, Soraya, who was Amir's future wife's father, the general, supported Baba. And they unite and support each other no matter the circumstance. And this is the thing about California, is that it didn't have this the social class difference as much as Afghanistan. Things were a little bit more relaxed in California. Then you have the third setting. You have Kabul in 2001. So in the first setting, you had Kabul, but Kabul was completely different. So now there's oppression, there's chaos, there's poverty, there's violence, and there's terrorism. So society in Kabul, many Afghans fled the country. The ones who did not live in fear every day because of the Taliban. People are all victims of the Taliban's terrorism. Children are hungry, and people are oppressed and abused. So people, they're scared for their lives. If someone even looks at the Taliban, they're in danger, and it's just the atmosphere in Kabul is completely different. And in the beginning, Amir was a spoiled child, and he lived in a very different atmosphere. But now things were completely different, but the thing that stayed the same was the nature of Kabul, which really which was actually the only thing that reminded Amir of home. And also the kebab reminded Amir of home a bit, because the taste never changed according to Amir. The author tries to tell the readers that the colonized Afghanistan is not the real one, and the Taliban do not represent the Afghan people. So he wants to show them that this was never Afghanistan until the Taliban came and changed everything. Now the plot. So the most important event by far, which made the story what it was, because without it there would be no story, and which caused everything to happen, was Hassan's rape, because it caused Amir to go through through the journey of seeking redemption. So basically, this is explaining the whole plot. So first you have the exposition. So you have Amir and Hassan's everyday life, such as going to the movies, or Amir reading stories to Hassan, or them just sitting on the tree and spending time together. Then you have the rising action. So Hassan refuses to give Asif the kite. So Asif was telling Hassan to give him the blue kite, yet Hassan refused. Then you have the climax, which was Asif rapes Hassan because Hassan refuses to give him the kite. Then you have the falling action, so Amir feels guilty for not defending Hassan. Then Rahim Khan gives him the chance to atone his sins. And then the resolution was Amir saves Sohrab, who is Hassan's son, from Asif, because Asif was planning on sexually abusing Sohrab as well. Yet Amir saves him in time. And the thing about Sohrab and Hassan, which helps Amir, is that Sohrab and Hassan both looked exactly the same, and they had a very similar personality and of course background, because Sohrab was Hassan's son. So it did feel like he was saving Hassan. It did feel like it was his second chance. And now the character analysis. So you have the protagonist, who is Amir. He is a dynamic character because he changes a lot. So Amir, growing up, was always a selfish, spoiled child who always thought of his needs first and never of others, and always saw himself as the victim. Sometimes, not a lot, but he did at times. But by the end of the story, Amir was a selfless person who thought of others and not only himself. And the opposite is Asif. He is a static character, he never changes, and he represents all of the evil in Afghanistan, and he never grows or changes. So the character profile of Amir. So as a child, he was always, because you can't have one just describe Amir, because Amir changes a lot, because this story is a Bildungsroman. So that means when the protagonist completely changes, and it just shows their growth as a person. So he was selfish because he wanted all of Baba's affection to himself. He did not protect Hassan when he had the chance to, because he wanted the blue kite and he thought that it would make Baba proud of him. And he sabotaged Hassan in order for Baba to kick him out, since he did not want to feel guilty anymore. So Amir was so tired of feeling guilty, and he would get a headache every time he saw Hassan. So instead of apologizing or doing something that would take a bit of effort from him, what he did, and which was the easiest option for him, was he sabotaged Hassan, so Hassan could leave, because he wanted one of them to leave. That way he could live and have internal peace. And he's a coward because he never stood up to Asif, and he did not protect Hassan when he had the chance to. He was jealous because he was always jealous of Hassan. For instance, when he realized Hassan was better at solving riddles, so he stopped treating them to him. And he was also jealous of Hassan's athleticism, and he was always jealous when Baba gave Hassan attention. And he was hungry for power, since he would constantly play little tricks on Hassan to feel powerful, such as changing the events of a story, and he would invent stories while pretending to read to Hassan. As an adult, let me check. Amir was selfless because he rescued Sohrab from Asif. He gives Amir's nephews his watch, and he always makes an effort to make Sohrab happy despite Sohrab's silence. He didn't just give up, he always tried and put in effort. And not only did he do that, but he risked his life fighting Asif just to save Sohrab, because he could have simply just left or not even risked his life. And when he found out that he was going to the Taliban, he could have just said, okay, this is not safe for me, I will leave. But no, he made sure that he would get Sohrab, and he went through all the obstacles just for Sohrab, just to redeem himself and to become a more selfless person. So he put himself in risk to make it up for Hassan when he really didn't have to. After all of these years, time passed. Hassan was dead. Things changed. He had a wife back home, yet he still did all of these things to save Sohrab. He's loving because he didn't judge Soraya for her past. And even though he was in the position to, he didn't. And he was expected to, but he still didn't. And he was a good husband, son-in-law, and uncle. And he always put his full effort with Sohrab. His decisions. So marrying Soraya despite her mistake shows that he's not judgmental. Saving Sohrab from Asif by sacrificing his life shows that he's selfless. And giving Farid $2,000 shows that he's generous. And what does Amir fear? Amir fears, as a child, he feared Asif because Asif was a bully and Amir did not defend himself. He didn't have the capability to. And as an adult, Amir feared losing Sohrab after Sohrab attempted to take his own life. And this event showed how caring Amir was, and also showed that, or not showed, but it made Amir more religious, and it shaped Amir to become the character he is because it made him religious. And body language. So when frustrated, Amir tends to be violent. For example, he tries getting Hassan to throw pomegranates at him by throwing them at him. And another example is when he fought Asif. So Amir was trying to make Hassan throw pomegranates at him. That way he would feel less guilty, and he would, feel more peaceful. And another example is when he fought Asif, he became a completely different person. He was extremely aggressive, and he even began laughing. Well, he started laughing because he no longer felt guilt and internal pain, but it did show that he did kind of enjoy the violence. And then you have his habits, which are writing stories and kite running. And you have his thoughts, which are his memories back home in Kabul, Hassan, and tragic winter day of 1975, which shaped him to who he is and traumatized him and made him feel guilty and led him to his journey of redemption. And he felt guilt, regret, and redemption at the end. And the dialect is Dari, dialect of Farsi. So basically, there were two languages, I think, in Afghanistan, but the dialect, the language used was Dari, which was a dialect of Farsi. And then you had the conflict. So you had several conflicts. You had the internal conflict because Amir feels extremely guilty for not defending Hassan, and this internal conflict made him feel guilty for the future years and throughout his young adult life. And his teenage life, of course. His other internal conflict was Amir feels responsible for his mother's death because his mother died while giving birth to him. So he always felt that his father resented him for that. And man versus man, which was Amir versus Asif. They have a physical fight, and if Amir won, he would take Sohrab, and he would live. Well, I guess he would live. So they fought for each other's lives and for Sohrab. And man versus society. Amir was friends with a Hazara, which was not acceptable in Afghan culture, especially when it came to racist people like Asif, who would judge Amir and who would, cause problems. And another internal conflict, which I did not mention, was Baba's internal conflict. Baba always had a conflict with, he felt guilty if he ever shared the love with Amir or had a close relationship with Amir because he could never acknowledge Hassan as his own son. Then you have the point of view, which is the first person narration. Amir was telling us everything from his point of view. Themes. So you have brotherhood, friendship, bullying, racism, family, coming of age, guilt, redemption, violence, and the influence of the past. So you have brotherhood. So throughout the novel, there was a thin line between brotherhood and friendship in Amir and Hassan's relationship. Despite coming from completely different backgrounds, the thing Amir and Hassan had in common was that they were both motherless and they fed from the same breast. By the end of the novel, it's revealed that they are both brothers. So they were half-brothers, but all of this time when Amir thought Hassan was a certain person, they could never be friends or close because of their difference in ethnicity. The situation changed by the end of the book. And these were all quotes regarding brotherhood and friendship. I treated Hassan like a friend, better even more like a brother. Would I ever let lie to you, Amir Agha? So this shows the trust and the bond Amir and Hassan had, and Hassan's loyalty to Amir. For you 1,000 times over, this was repeated many times, and this is a very important quote because it shows the love and sacrifice they had towards each other. We won. So this shows that they were really one. They were always happy for each other, especially Amir. Especially Hassan. Hassan was always happy for Amir, and that was their unity when Amir won the kite running competition. He knew I had betrayed him, yet he was rescuing me once again, maybe for the last time. So that was when Amir sabotaged Hassan, and Hassan didn't say anything, yet he knew that Amir was sabotaging him, and he let him do so. And I loved him in that moment more than I'd ever loved anyone. So that showed, of course, the love, especially when people are family and when they're friends. There's always love, in the relationship. Hassan and I um, fed from the same breasts. We took our first steps in the same lawn, in the same roof. We spoke our first words. So that, of course, shows brotherhood and how they grew up together and shared so many memories. I dream that someday you'll return to Kabul and visit the land of our childhood. If you do, you'll find an old faithful friend waiting for you. So, despite all of these years that passed, and despite all that happened and all the damage that took place because of Asif's actions, Hassan still forgave Amir, and they both still thought about each other and remembered their memories. And even Hassan wanted to see Amir despite all of this time. So they never really forgot about each other, despite them not being in contact and being in different parts of the world. Bullying and racism. So, being a minority in Afghanistan, Hazaras are bullied and degraded. Examples: they chased him on the street and mocked him when he hobbled by. So that was basically the bullying that Ali endured. And some had taken by calling him Babalu or Boogeyman because Ali had a condition in his leg because he had polio, so he has difficulties with his leg and difficulties walking, and he was made fun of because of that. You, the Hazar, look at me when I'm talking to you. So this is bullying and degrading, and being called the Hazar and not by your name was kind of aggressive. To rid Afghanistan of all these dirty Kasif Hazaras. So this also shows that this was Asif's comment, and it was racist. How can you talk to him, play with him, or let him touch you? So Hazaras were often talked about as if they were animals or not humans, and that's again racism. How can you call him your friend? So again, it wasn't socially accepted in Afghanistan for a Pashtun to be friends with a Hazara. Don't ever fool yourself and think you're something more. So that was Asif degrading Hassan as usual, and he was just a Hazara, wasn't he? So when Amir was trying to make himself feel better after what had happened, he kept convincing himself that it was okay because Hassan was a Hazara and he deserved it. But that was no justification, and despite whatever ethnicity someone is, they never ever deserved to be sexually abused. Now, the theme of family. So you have the theme of fathers and sons. So throughout the novel, Baba's behavior towards Amir causes Amir's jealousy towards Hassan. It's also the reason Amir felt responsible for his mother's death and constantly tried to impress his father. He was desperately trying to gain his father's approval to the point where he was willing to watch Hassan get raped just to get the blue kite. So he wanted to please his father so bad to the point where he just didn't save Hassan because he wanted the blue kite in order to impress his father. Some quotes to back up what I just said were, I wanted Baba all to myself. I was so proud of Baba, so proud of us. So that shows, the unity between Amir and his father. Show him for once and for all that his son is worthy. So I did not write his son, I wrote his is worthy. So sorry for that. So basically, Amir really wanted to show he was very determined to show his father that he was worthy of love, he was worthy of affection, because he was craving it very badly. And I wasn't going to fail Baba. So that also shows Amir's determination to please his father and also his desperation. And that right there was the single greatest moment of my 12 years of life, seeing Baba on that roof, proud of me at last. So Amir had worked so hard to the point where when he finally made Baba proud, it was just the best moment of his life. Shh, Baba Khan, I'm here, your son is right here. So that was when the relationship had improved and Baba became sick. Amir was there to support him every step of the way. Coming of age, which in my opinion was one of the most important themes in the story, being that the story is a building roman. So the protagonist Amir changes from a selfish spoiled boy to a selfless man. Readers learn about his past haunting him and shaping him to the person he is in the present. Examples: that was a long time ago, but it's wrong what they say about the past. I've learned how you can bury it. So Amir learned how to really forget about his past or just not think of it as much. It was my past of unatoned sins. So Amir had unatoned sins means sins that are not, redeemed. So Amir had done things that he had not forgiven himself for, or that were just not fixed or resolved. My entire childhood seems like one old like one long lazy summer with Hassan. So basically, when Amir looks back, he remembers his days with his friend Hassan, because Hassan was a major part of Amir's life, because they spent many days together and they shared so many memories. And I still hadn't made my mind up about God. So part of growing up and becoming the person who you are is religion. You know, some people choose not to be religious. Some people choose a certain religion. Some people change their religion. So really, religion does shape your life, and choosing whether you believe in sort of religion really shapes you to the person you are. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't wait for spring. So Amir always mentioned how he'd love winter, and how all children in Afghanistan would love winter because school was off and there was the kite running competition. But Amir was so traumatized after what happened that he just wanted spring to start and forget about what had happened in winter. The next thing we have is guilt. So two of the main characters in the novel had been living with guilt for a long time. Amir felt guilty for not saving Hassan. Baba felt guilty for not acknowledging Hassan as his son. So examples were, I felt like sticking a knife in my eye, so that's how guilty Amir felt. I was that monster, so Amir constantly felt like he was a monster and he was a coward, and that he was pretending to be something he was not because of the way he saw himself due to the guilt he was feeling. Lately, every time Hassan was around, I was getting a headache. So that's how you feel when you're guilty. You have physical symptoms of guilt. I was a liar, a cheat, and a thief. So that was the way Amir saw himself. I wanted to be able to breathe again. So again, the physical symptoms and pain Amir felt due to the guilt. Baba and I were more alike than I'd ever known. We both betrayed the people who would have given their lives for us. So basically, throughout the beginning of the novel, it was constantly mentioned how different Baba and Amir were. And even in chapter 4, Baba mentioned that if he had not seen Amir come out of his wife, he would never have thought Amir was his son because of the differences they had. But they had both committed major sins, and that made them feel guilty, and that was that they betrayed important people to them. Baba betrayed Ali and Amir betrayed Hassan. The next thing we have is redemption. So the novel is about Amir's journey of seeking redemption, and the examples are, there's a way to be good again. And then you have violence. So violence was exhibited various times throughout the novels. For instance, the people's reaction was violent when Amir was competing in the race. So in the final, when there was two kites left, it got quite aggressive. And all other events that exhibited violence related to Asif, because Asif is a symbol of violence, and such as Hassan's rape, stoning two individuals to death, and physically fighting Amir. So these are all violent events that took place, and Asif, of course, was the reason behind them. Examples that prove what I said: the chorus of cut him grew louder like Roman chanting for the gladiators to kill. So basically, this is a simile of Amir comparing the crowd screams to the Romans chanting for the gladiators. And the last and one of the most important themes we have is the influence of the past. So the past haunts both Amir and Sohrab. Amir felt guilty and felt like a coward until he saved Sohrab. Sohrab was traumatized to the death of his parents because he was always scared that he would get abandoned, and he always felt abandonment, and the sexual abuse he had endured from Asif. So the sexual abuse he had endured led him to always not letting anyone touch him and being very distant from other individuals. Examples were, it's wrong what they say about the past, I've learned how you can bury it. Because the past claws its way out, so the past never really stays where it is. And I thought of the life I had lived until the winter of 1975 came along and changed everything and made me what I am today. So basically, the past can change you forever, and it can stick with you and change you into the person you become. And now, to the end of the analysis, so you have the flow of the text, so you have a lot of description and a lot of imagery, because it's very described. You can even imagine how Afghanistan looks like because of the description, and you can even imagine the events taking place. And you have the description of the way the characters looked, especially the description of the Hazaras and their features. Then you have the tone. So the tone of the novel is nostalgic, since the narrator was remembering his own life and recalling his memories with his friend Hassan. So Amir's life really consisted of many things. When he was in Kabul as a child, his life consisted of going to school, trying to impress Baba, living with Hassan and Ali. And then in the US, he was married and he spent lots of time with his in-laws, and his father passed away. And then when in the end he ended up spending a lot of time with Sohrab, which was his nephew. And then you have the figurative language. So I didn't use examples because I have examples in my other summaries. Actually, in my reading logs I have many examples, but you have lots of similes and metaphors, lots of similes. You have, one or two oxymorons. You have lots of personification. You have imagery, lots of imagery. You have lots of foreshadowing. You have foreshadowing when Asif said that their problem wasn't the end, and in the end Asif causes problems to both Amir and Hassan. And you have when Amir was talking to his father about religion, and Baba says, God help us if we fall into the hands of these people, the religious people. And when they did fall into the hands of the Taliban, which is an extremely religious group, it's really not religious, it's just it's so religious to the point where it becomes dangerous. That's another example of the foreshadowing. And you have hyperboles because there's many times where Amir over exaggerates about his feelings. Then you have more on the characters and the symbols. So you have Baba, who's strong, he's powerful, he's a humanitarian because he built an orphanage and he defended that woman on the bus when the soldier wanted to take her. And then you have that he is smart. Baba was always smart. He was a smart businessman and he was very wise. He was non-religious though, and he told Amir the way he felt about religion, and he was distant. And you have Ali, who was the foil of Baba. They were opposites, especially in their parenting style. Baba was often distant, yet Ali showed a lot of affection towards Hassan, and he was very caring, and he always prayed when Hassan had left the house. He was loyal. He was a very loyal servant towards Baba and Amir, and he was protective of his son, because when Baba had found out everything that had happened and took place, the events that had took place, he wanted to protect Hassan from Amir, and that's why he decided to leave, and he let Hassan lie because he wanted to protect Hassan. Sohrab is quiet and he had gone through a lot, but we don't have much to describe about Sohrab because he didn't really do a lot of action, yet his reactions were the things that told us about him. Yet we do know that he is quiet and that he is traumatized, but that's not a way to describe someone's character. And Asif is a bully. He is an abuser and he is evil. Asif is an abuser because he sexually abused Hassan and Sohrab, and he's a bully because he also abused Hassan verbally, and he was racist, and he also threatened to hit Amir. And he is evil because he stoned 2 people to death. And then you have the symbols. So you have the lamb, which symbolizes Hassan and sometimes Sohrab, because Hassan had the look of sacrifice and not being able to do anything, which was the same look as the lamb when it was killed. And then you have the tree, which was the symbol of Hassan and Amir's friendship, because written on the tree was the sultans of Kabul, Amir and Hassan, and they always spent time together and went to that tree when they were together and when they were playing together. Then you have the cleft lip, which is the representation of Hassan, or maybe all Hazaras, because all Hazaras had facial deformities. So this is it, guys, for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned from it, and I hope you took good notes and you are prepared to analyze this book on your own. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Bye bye. Please like the video, and by the way, I have additional notes, and if you want to join my Google Classroom, the invite link is in the description below, and that's if you want to join. Of course, please like and comment any questions you have. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Bye bye.